pretty easy to take out with a good full charged up blast or several really quick shots. However, it makes for an interesting enemy to deal with in these tight quarters. And then in a few seconds we're going to have to deal with some rushing water style areas as we're trying to make some random jumps. Watch out for the enemies before go ahead and moving onto these platforms, and as you can see, because the water is moving on the platform, it drags you in whatever direction that the water is flowing in. These little enemies right here can definitely be some of the more annoying ones to deal with, just because they are so low to the ground. Now as we climb this ladder, we run into Eddie again, who gives me another one of the item full upgrades, which really isn't going to help me out, really. And then when we climb up the next ladder, we move out into more of the jungle-themed area. Now that we're back through the jungle, we have to watch out for some of these spike things, as well as these big, I guess, gorilla-style monsters that are shooting rocks at us. When you get to this platform, you want to fall off just slightly, and then hold the left button so that you land on the platform to go ahead and grab the letter N. Now after that jungle part, we end up now in an army base. As you can see missiles going around, and you can see in the background there that there's tanks. So definitely adds to that whole Vietnam theme. Definitely a war zone going on in this stage. Like I said before, because of that, it definitely makes for one of the most interesting stages throughout the 8-bit Mega Man titles. Now with these gray missiles popping out of the ground, you gotta be careful when making some quick jumps around here with these single pedestals. Watch out for them, wait for them to shoot up, and then as they're falling down, then make your jump and move on, and then you reach the end, and we enter the lair of Napalm Man. Now, Napalm Man for a boss ends up being, in the middle in terms of difficulty from some of the ones that we faced, because he shoots out 3 quick missiles, which can take a little bit of timing to get used to try to jump over. He also shoots out his main weapon, his little napalm bombs that he shoots up straight in the air that do an arcing motion before landing. They're relatively easy to dodge because they're always going to land just a certain distance away from them usually, so they can pretty much be timed when you're trying to move around them. The real thing to watch out for is those straight missiles, and get the timing of jumping over them and then jumping over each one of them to go ahead and then land in a shot on them when you possibly can. Once the timing's down, he's taken care of, and of course we're going to be getting these little napalm arcing bombs as the weapon that we gain from defeating Napalm Man. Now we only have 2 Robot Masters left to go here, and we're going to start off with Charge Man. Charge Man, well, he's a steam engine it looks like, or at least just a walking train. His whole level is train themed, kind of the more traditional current trains that you would see, as well as some other kind of old classic trains that we'll have to go through throughout the stage, so it makes for an interesting themed level. Not necessarily probably your first choice when you're thinking of a vicious robot boss or robot master in any game, but it ends up being a pretty effective theme for a stage. We have the Mets that are riding little trains, and we have the different trains that we're going to be going from car to car while traveling through it. If nothing else can be said, at least it was a pretty creative stage. The letter for this is actually located in one of those trains, and we'll have to use the rushed coil in order to obtain it. Now as we drop down here, we end up inside of the train, and we'll have to deal with some more of these chicken robots that shoot the little walking eggs out, which is a pretty funny overall robot to have to deal with. We continue on and move from car to car, taking out some little robot mice and more of the chickens as we make it through. Now as we enter this next train car, this is when we're going to have to use the rush coil in order to get the letter. As you can see, there's the letter A up there, which is just out of the reach of our jump. So we go ahead and switch to our rush coil, use it to go ahead and grab the letter, and then we continue on and move again to one of the tops of the cars. Now I'm going to go ahead and use Napalm Man's ability a little bit. As you can see, it rolls out that little napalm bomb and explodes whenever it touches whatever enemy it does next. And it ends up being one of the most effective and best to use of the Robot Master abilities, especially when you're facing normal enemies throughout the game. You can see it only takes about 1 shot, sometimes 2, to take out most of the enemies. And against some of the bigger enemies that we'll have to face a little bit later on, some of the bigger enemies like the walking mechs and such, we'll be able to take him out rather easily with the Napalm Man ability. Now as we head down here, we take out the big gorilla style monster with just one shot of napalm. We then go ahead and move on to take on Charge Man. Now for Charge Man being a train, of course he's going to try to charge you, which when he's doing his full charge, you're not going to be able to hit him. He then turns red, in which signifying that I guess he's ticked off, and he shoots a little bit of steam up into the air, which ends up being 3 falling flaming rocks that you have to dodge. They're pretty easy to dodge, and since a full charged up shot against him takes out a lot of his health, he's one of those bosses that's very suitable for defeating with just the Mega Buster. And if you wanted to, you could have used Stone Man's ability in order to take him out even quicker than the Mega Buster did. However, with him defeated, we're going to go ahead and get his ability, which is the Charge Kick. And then we're going to go ahead and move on to our 8th and final Robot Master. And last but not least, it's Starman. Starman, of course, being a space-themed level. He also happens to be weak against the Wave Man ability, which I showcased earlier on. Now his is a stage that's really interesting, not because it's just a space-themed level, which we have seen before, but because there's really no gravity in the stage. You have that light feeling of very low gravity in the level, which takes a little bit to get used to, but makes the stage overall pretty fun to go ahead and play through. Now with that less gravity feeling, of course the game programmers are going to try to screw you up by adding a lot of spikes to the ceilings of areas for you to make sure that you don't jump up too high or end up touching your head against the spikes and end up losing a life. Now as we continue on, the spikes in the stage become more of a nuisance, being more spread out and a lot more of them, mainly on every ceiling. Now here's where we grab our final leather. So now that we have all 8 of the Mega Man 5 leathers, and now we have the ability to call the Robot Bird Beat, who basically kind of hovers over you and then attacks any enemy that comes on screen. If you've never played Mega Man 5 and used Beat, but you have played Mega Man 9, it's kind of similar to Hornet Man's ability, except I think Hornet Man's ability is a little overall better than using Beat, the Robot Bird. Now here we have some walking mechs, which can definitely be a pain. They're easily taken out with a couple shots from the Napalm Bomb, if you want to, or just go ahead and shoot them a few times with the Mega Buster. As you can see, some more kind of level-themed Mets here, as we have Mets in spacesuits. Now we have some moving platforms that move up and down as you try to move across them, which can be a little bit of a pain. They're not that hard to move around because of the low gravity, but you have to watch out for some of the enemies on them. Once we get past that, we have one more robot mech, and then we enter the lair of Starman. Now with Starman, he's one of the bosses that's very similar to Woodman, Skullman, and we'll see later on Flower Man in Mega Man 6. They have the rotating shield around them, and then they throw it at you. Starman's is really easy to dodge because you have such a huge jump, being his level is the low gravity theme. It's very easy to go ahead and jump over it, and even though he does shoot it sometimes from the air as well, it's just as easy to dodge, if not easier, from when he shoots it at the air. Wait for him to land, or wait for him just to throw the shield, jump up at him, or land and shoot a full charged up Mega Buster shot at him, and do a lot of damage and take him out pretty quickly. With him taken care of, we've now defeated all 8 of the Robot Masters, and we will be getting our last of the 8 Robot Master abilities here. We now have our Star Crash, and we also have the Super Arrow. Now, the Super Arrow we're going to be using in a particular part in the Proto Man Castle stages, as we now go to Proto Man's Castle. You know, very unique looking, especially themed around Proto Man's helmet there in the center. And the Super Arrow, it shoots out and it sticks to the walls and works as a platform. And you're going to have to do a long jump where you're going to have to ride one of the arrows across the gap, make it stick into the wall, and then shoot a couple more up so that you can get up to the top of the platform. Other than that, we really won't be using them for any more of the jumps throughout the run. Now, as we've already defeated the 8 Robot Masters and we're in the kind of the second half of the game as it really is, we start to see all the same things that we've dealt with throughout the course of the run. They're kind of throwing everything that you previously learned, all the previous enemies at you, as one last huge challenge in going through these castles. Each of the different stages throughout these castle levels usually has at least 1 or 2 parts that's meant to try to trick you or meant to take you out so that you don't advance. For example to that, later on in this stage, we're going to have to be dealing with my least favorite part of the Mega Man series, and that is the disappearing and reappearing blocks. Now right here, we're going to be using the Rush Jet to quickly make it over this gap. We don't have the blocks there. That area is meant to trick you a little bit in case you don't know to use your Rush Jet. As we continue on, trying to get through these enemies as quick as possible.